course, absolutely. But I wondered if you do find performing really quite electrifying.
Absolutely. I think that because I've grown up in the music world, I've grown up playing the violin since I was 5. So every stage of my life, now that I'm finally 20, I'm out of my teens, I do feel that as I've grown, my violin's grown with me. So if you know, I go through different stages of my life, a preteen, teenager, now hopefully a more mature person, lady, then the violin definitely grows with me.
But you've also been incredibly successful in bringing the violin to a wider audience. And I wonder what you think the secret of your success in doing that is. I mean, because of course, you know, you
Sure.
play brilliantly and you're a great musician, but there's got to be more because there are lots of great musicians out there, aren't there?
I think that it's just a connection with people through the music. I think it's really hard to analyze success or something that's gone right. I think it's really hard. I think it's just the fact that I present music which is totally unbiased. I'm showing people for the first time that the violin is capable of having the strength of a human voice or an electric guitar, for example. For a long time it's been kept in a box, and I think that for the first time I've shown people that with the violin I can present a whole new world to them, and a whole new world beyond violin playing that is just free of barriers, free of sexes, free of races, that is just pure music that you should enjoy.
It's quite a utopia you're talking about there.
Definitely.
Does that world exist somewhere?
I think so. It has to exist. Well, personally, I've grown up in a really cross-cultural, cosmopolitan upbringing, and so I think that had deep impact on my, you know, my philosophy towards my career, definitely.
How do you think, as a child being brought up in that environment, I mean, how did it feel? Because did you feel at all like a sort of an outsider being brought up in London, you know?
I felt slightly guilty because I had, you know, obviously look half Chinese, half Thai, but I'd grown up all my life in London, only spoke English until the age of 8. And suddenly when I don't know if I told you last time, when I went off to China to study for 6 months when I was 8, that was a real cultural shock. It was never a shock being in London because I felt like a little Western kid. I never really thought that I was Chinese in any way, apart from my appearance. And suddenly when I was 8, I went to China, I had to learn the Chinese language. People thought I was either stuck up or very weird not to be able to speak Chinese. And so that I learned a lot from that experience.
It must have been quite weird at 8 years old to find yourself so far away from home. I mean, do you think that you sort of built up a real sort of inner strength by experiences
Definitely,
like that?
definitely. A lot of people have said, you know, is this too much for you being a young person traveling so much? I said, it hasn't happened by chance. The last 10 years, basically, for the first 5 years I was in classical, and for the last recent 5 years I've been leading a more rock and roll hectic lifestyle. So it's pretty much being a nomad, traveling with a suitcase everywhere, being quite a solitary, independent character. But at the same time, there was years of preparation before that, you know, technique, going off to China to study. And I actually loved China so much I didn't really want to come back home to London. Practically my grandmother, who was chaperoning me, had to drag me away from my teacher, my friends in China, my animals that I'd adopted, to come back to my friends, my school in London, and my parents.
Your parents even?
Yeah, I know.
The last of a long list. When you're on tour, do you find that it can get to be quite a lonely experience? I mean, I read somewhere that your favourite good luck charm is your grandmother, and that you'd like to take her on tour with you. But it's hardly sex, drugs and rock and roll, is it?
No, no. I don't think you need... To enjoy life on the road, you don't need sex, drugs and rock and roll. That's, you know, that's very out of fashion to enjoy those things. I think that... but... I'd like to take my dogs on tour. When we finally get this European passport for our animals, then I'm definitely taking my dog, and I've got a big parrot that I got for my birthday present. So I'd love to bring all my family, all my animals on tour. But when I first...
What a menagerie.
I know, a little zoo. But when I first... One of my idols in the music world was Annie Lennox. And when I first met her, we were at the airport, and we had barely said hello. She said, "Vanessa, my sweet, you must remember that this is a really lonely life." And, you know, they were really wise words that I heard when I was 15 years old. And I've always been quite an independent soul. You know, I've always had people around me. I've never gone out of the house alone in my life. But, you know, as personality-wise, I'm pretty independent. And since I was little, I'd spook my parents. I was a bit of an existentialist as a 5-year-old. I'd kind of say, you know, are we living in somebody else's dream? Are we figments of our imagination? And I used to sit at a dinner table in front of my mother and father and even friends who came over. And I'd suddenly say, I feel alone. You know, I don't feel that I'm related to you. Just leave me for a moment. I feel that there's some external force bringing me and stretching me away from you. And so and that's why I think music is a perfect life to lead for me, because you need time to be alone, to create. And that's why I never feel lonely, but I do feel alone, which is good.
No wonder your parents sent you to China. You must have been quite difficult to have around the house.
Yeah,
I imagine.
it's like odd child.
The stories of child prodigies are invariably tragedies. You know, they always end in terrible, you know, drink-rattled old, someone at 30 were old before their time. And I wondered, I mean, you're 20 now and you're still going strong, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen to you, thankfully. I wondered if there's some sort of secret to avoiding that kind of, the pitfalls of early success.
I don't know. It would be a bit presumptuous of me to sort of start giving advice about that, because...
Because I'm a bit worried about it, you see.
Because, you know, who knows what's going to happen. But I think that because this whole, you know, element of showbiz and entertainment and interviews and concertizing didn't happen just suddenly by chance. As I said, I warmed up in the classical world. And then when I was 15, you know, I hit rock and roll. And so I've never felt that I've been sort of suddenly plunged into this whole vague foreign lifestyle, and I think that everything that I've done career-wise has grown with me at a pace that I'm really, really happy with. So I think it's, as long as you've been brought up in the right way, you know, I've been brought up with a lot of love, quite a lot of discipline in my family, and you know what's still important. I think it's so easy in this career to have distractions, but I know that when I walk on that stage, whether it be for 20 minutes on TV, 200,000 in a big stadium or 2,000 in a tiny concert hall, it's the same feeling that I had as an 8-year-old to go to my first violin lesson. It's just that same amount of excitement, the same amount of wanting to do well, for my own pride and integrity, but also to make either the teacher in those days or those audiences really enjoy coming to listen to me, really.
You seem a lot more relaxed and a lot more, I don't know, sparkly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not just the eyeshadow. Did you feel that you've gone through some sort of rite of passage recently?
So I think, yeah, hitting 20, you're suddenly out of your teens, and for such a long time you want to grow up, and suddenly you are 20, and then you're not sure whether you do want to grow up or not. So it's a time for reflection, definitely, once you hit your 20s, definitely. But somebody who interviewed me in Belgium the other day said that I was more serene now and less energetic than when I was 15. I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. I mean,
I'm
but by the
mellowing
time
out.
you get to 30, you'll be wishing that you weren't growing older, I can assure you. And just finally, I believe that you used to have a poster of Sly Stallone on your bedroom wall, and I wondered if he's still your heartthrob or if you've moved on from Sly.
No. Sly Stallone was my heartthrob when I was 8, and I got someone to get me that poster from a video shot, and it was the biggest thing. Every time I went on tour as a 12-year-old, I'd come back, go over to my room, and you know what I did? I took a Polaroid of the poster so I could take it on tour with me. But now I don't have any heartthrobs on my wall.
Poor old Sly, he's going to be ever so disappointed that he's off your wall. Thank you so much,
Thank
Vanessa.
you, Mariella.
That was wonderful. Thanks. Whilst Vanessa gets ready to whip us into a frenzy with her violin, don't go away, because in part 2 we have Martin Amis, fast approaching 50 and still the enfant terrible of the literary world. Take it away, Vanessa.